What would it mean to you to actually break through your limitations? What would it mean to break through the limitations that you believe exist in the circumstances all around you? It could change everything, right? Like if you could finally just punch that through, get on the other side of it. I know that there are things in your life, there are things in my life that I think as, gosh, if I could just overcome that circumstance, that person, that inability, we could describe all of these as limitations. And some of them are limitations in our own mind. Some of them are physical limitations, circumstantial limitations. But it's curious because we all have seen those examples of humans who have overcome extreme limitations, what we would perceive, what we would define as extreme limitations. How do they do it? How can we do it so that whatever we dream up, we don't have anything keeping us from it? Well, that's exactly what this week's episode is all about, how to break through those limitations. And I first want to start by defining a bit about what those limitations might be. I mentioned physical limitations, circumstantial, mindset, things, beliefs. Limitations are often things that we impose on ourselves or that are imposed upon us by others. And here's what I mean by that. You are lacking opportunity. There's nothing available in the company that you're working for right now. That feels like a limitation. I work with people all the time who feel like they've just hit that ceiling. And it's not necessarily the glass ceiling. It's, I know I'm capable of more, but nobody sees it the way I do. That can be that external limitation that's being imposed on you. Another thing I see frequently is the limitations that we impose on ourselves or that we're forced to do because of this feeling of compression. The cool thing about the personal dynamics report that I have all of my clients participate in is that it measures the adjustments you're making to your unique behavioral strengths. By some algorithm that the psychologists have created, it's able to identify those adjustments where you're being pushed down and held back. If you're someone who's naturally enjoys being in charge, it can sense when authority is being taken away from you. If you're naturally someone who wants to be around people and collaborate and do all those things, it can sense where you're being pushed into a mold concerning your natural behavioral strengths that does not fit you. Now, big picture, this can have a lot to do with your career happiness, with whether you are enjoying your job and whether you're leveraging your strengths to their full capacity. But when it comes to limitations, that feeling of compression and being limited from utilizing your natural skills, strengths, and abilities in some way is suffocating. I see it every day. I have conversations about this every day. I've experienced it myself where I knew I was capable of more, but the limitations inside the organization were preventing me, or at least that was my perception, from doing everything I wanted to do. Now, as I said, those limitations can be external, they can be internal. What I just read the other day, the paper ceiling, meaning you're being denied opportunities because you don't have the degree or that you have gained experience through life, through self-taught skills, through the investments that you've made in yourself, but that lack of degree is creating a paper ceiling for you. That might be one of the limitations that you're experiencing. The perceived limitations can also be the things that you are saying to yourself about yourself. And these are usually preceded by words like I can't, I don't, I should, I shouldn't. Anytime you have a sentence in your brain that starts with those words, there's a good chance that you are seeing that as a limitation. Either I can't do this or they won't let me. See how it works? Like it's this weird mix of internal and external mindset and circumstantial limitations that are keeping us from breaking through to that next level. So, how do you break through? Well, there are two things in play and interplaying with each other that I believe you can take a hold of, that I can take a hold of, that is going to help us break through those limitations. And the first one is stop arguing for the limitations. Stop arguing for your limitations. Stop arguing for the limitations in the circumstances. And what I mean by that is the I can't land that new job. A job search is really hard. The system is broken. It's the recruiter's fault. It's the hiring manager's fault. Blame is also one of those things that is a sign that you're arguing for limitations. So just stop it. Just don't do it anymore. Well, how do you do that? Number one, how do we stop arguments with anybody, human to human? We don't engage. We just don't engage. And I really, really love the way psychologist Michael Singer talks about how to do this. And he talks about it as not leaning in. We are humans, my friends. Those limiting thoughts are going to pass right through our brains. It's natural. It's part of that primitive brain function that we have. And of course, we're humans. We're going to feel stuff. We're going to respond to the circumstances that are happening. We're going to, as Viktor Frankl says, attach meaning to the things that are happening around us, to us, however you want to talk about it. But we don't have to lean in. We don't have to engage. We can just let those thoughts just float on by. It's amazing how if you just don't lean in, they do pass by. It's that soon as you start leaning in, as soon as you start giving that thought some traction and momentum, it starts to build, it starts to snowball, and you start arguing for that limiting thought, that limiting belief. Here's another way to stop arguing for limitations, and that is to process instead of indulge. So that first little lean in, once it gains momentum, then you start to indulge that negative thought and the feeling that always comes along with it. So instead of indulging in it, process it. And I love, love, love what my life coach, Brooke Castillo, teaches about how to process thoughts. She's created something called the model that'll help you break down all those thoughts and capture them in a way that helps you process. And by process, I mean just like acknowledge what's going on in your brain, be a curious watcher, a witness to what's happening instead of a participant in what's happening in your own thought process. The model consists of this. You have a circumstance. Circumstance is just something that's happening. Then you have your thought about that circumstance. And a thought always creates a feeling, and a feeling always motivates action. That's when it starts to spiral out of control because you're not paying attention to the feeling that's created by the thought and the action or inaction that's being motivated by the feeling. So the first step is to just do a download of all your thoughts. In interview preparation, I call this a doubt download, because oftentimes you're getting ready to go into interview and what happens? Imposter syndrome kind of thoughts. They won't be able to see my skills. What am I thinking? I have no business being in this interview. Whatever they are, limitations. So the way to stop arguing for limitations is just to get them out on a piece of paper. Just stream of consciousness, get it all out on a piece of paper. And it's amazing how seeing them on a piece of paper like that just is a story on paper instead of drama going on inside your brain. So helpful. Now, pick one or two of those. Which ones are the ones that you just gravitate to, that you indulge the most? If it's I'm too old, how does that make you feel? I'm too young. How does that make you feel? You're always going to go to the feeling that that thought is creating, because that is a clue. And we'll get into that a little bit more in a minute here. But choose a different thought. Now, I'm not suggesting you have to necessarily choose the opposite thought. If your thought is I'm too old, then the opposite would be I'm too young. We don't need to go there. It doesn't make logical sense, but you can go to I might not be too old. I might have just the right amount of age and experience to do this job well. That is the trick, my friend. That is the little tiny shift in your thoughts that is going to help you process it instead of indulge in the negative. The process starts with the download, and then the process of moving away from indulging is choosing better thoughts. And by better, I mean choosing thoughts that feel better, that offer you a little bit of release, that offer you a little bit of soothing, that offer you just a little bit of comfort. That's how you know you're going in the right direction to process. Now, the other piece of this equation is let your feelings be your guide. Our feelings have a lot to tell us. As I said, our thoughts are creating a feeling. So how you feel is an indication that I might not be thinking something that's really good for me. I can't, I don't, I shouldn't, I should. None of those ever turn into feeling great, right? They usually turn into feeling discouraged or feeling deflated or demoralized in some way. So, how do you use a negative feeling as a guide? Well, anytime you're thinking a limiting thought or limiting belief or arguing for limitations, it's going to present as a negative emotion. Always. That is your clue. So if you're feeling something negative, something painful, it's a good indication that you've just argued for the limitation, either one you're putting on yourself or the one you think other people are doing to limit you. But here's something that's kind of cool. It's not necessarily bad news that you're having a negative emotion, because your negative emotion is telling you, oh, okay, I am arguing for my limitations in this circumstance, in this situation. As soon as you feel the negative emotion, it's a sign that you're in disagreement with something you know to be true about yourself. So if you're arguing for age, that you're too old, and it feels awful, feels disempowering, that's your clue. You're in disagreement, my friend, because somewhere deep inside you, you know that age does not limit you. You know that age and experience and longevity actually makes you more valuable in the workplace. Why wouldn't it? Experience matters. Knowledge matters. It's valuable. Let's do another example. Let's say that you want to make a career pivot or you want to get a promotion. And you think about it, you love the idea of it at first, and then you start to feel bad. That means that you started arguing for the limitations that you either have on yourself or that you perceive are out there in the world about that idea, about that promotion, that pivot. What are some of the arguments? I don't have what it takes. There's not actually any opportunities in the company for me to get that promotion. That other industry isn't going to take me seriously. I've been doing this for 25 years. They're not going to think that I can do this job in that industry or that I can transfer these skills into that new occupation. You see how the subtle argument is just below the surface. My friends, you've got to get control of the argument. You've got to ask yourself the question, can I stop arguing for my limitations? And the answer is always yes. And you can use your emotions as the guide. So what do you do when you realize, okay, I'm arguing for my limitations, I feel rotten? You start looking for the positive aspects. You start looking for the possibilities. That's where those new thoughts can help you so much. That's why I can't even talk about these two things as step one, step two, because they're interrelated. It's like this awareness that you're constantly creating and evolving for yourself. Feel bad? Oh, I must be thinking something. Feel bad? I must be arguing for my limitations. Want to feel better? Look for the positive aspects. Choose a thought that's just a shift away from the negative feeling. This is a process. This is not going to be easy for many of you. I'm naturally a positive person, but let me tell you, I've had my moments. I've had times when I've been in really toxic environments, narcissistic bosses, times when things just didn't seem to be falling into place, that I could allow my own self-talk, arguing for limitations, hold me back. And I know it can happen in any circumstance, and it probably happens for you. However, it's possible to get on the road to changing your thoughts, to being intentional about your thoughts because you're watching your own brain and you're paying attention, most importantly, to your feelings about things, to your emotions. Your emotions always tell you the truth. And what I mean by that is it always tells you the truth in terms of whether you're arguing for your limitations or you're arguing and standing up for your possibilities. You feel great? You're headed in the right direction, my friend. So practice this. Practice this awareness of your thoughts and your feelings, and those are the only two things that we can control in this world. But it is the thing that makes the biggest difference. So that's the great news. The only things we can control are the things that will take us step by step by step to finally breaking through and achieving anything and everything that we imagine. What are you going to do today? What limitation are you going to stop arguing for? Figure it out. Set it aside and watch what happens next. All right, my friends, I'll talk to you again soon. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and please visit elissashuck-careercoach.com for more information about how I can help you with your career and leadership goals. Talk to you soon.